Hi and welcome to part 3 of the removed textures of Minecraft. And first of all, I want to thank everyone for the amazing support I've been getting. Thank you so much. And also, I've been listening to the feedback, so I changed some things about this series. Also, this is the third part of this series, so if you want to see part 1 and part 2, it's already out on my channel. So if you want to see some other removed textures and you didn't watch them, you can watch it now. Alright, first of all, I will actually show you the finished version of the texture and the unfinished version of the texture so you can actually compare it. And second of all, I haven't been including too many blocks from the texture update, which is a lot different than the snapshot that we got. So as an example, logs were actually changed in the texture update too, which I didn't include. So I'll try to include that in my next video. Thank you so much for the feedback about this, and let's start. And also here's my quick reminder to like and subscribe, because subscribing and liking helps. If I get 200 likes in this video, I will actually do another part, which will be part 4. And also if you want to see the videos first, like hours before the actual releases, you can become a member to see it first. Alright, so you probably know what Diorite is. It's one of these stone blocks. You probably don't even use it, but yeah, it exists in caves. So before, it was actually supposed to look more like this, which is supposed to be like, yeah, the old texture. This actually never made it to the game, but it felt like a middle ground before the new Diorite and the old Diorite, but they actually went to make it more new, which was probably a better choice. Alright, so now that we talked about Diorite, let's actually talk about Andesite. And as you can see, it also blends well with stone, and it's one of these cave blocks, but it also had 2 texture changes, which I found right now, because there might actually be more, so I'll cover them in my next video, I guess. Alright, so in June of 2018, Job has actually posted a picture of the new Andesite, and it looked like this. It looked much more cobbled, but it also looked a little weird. It kinda looked maybe like gravel, and also like it was melting at the same time. I don't know how to describe this. Alright, so if you think that this kinda looks like gravel, then you are not gonna believe the next texture, because in snapshot 18W43A, the snapshot where we got most of the texture changes, we actually received one andesite texture which will look so different. Alright, so here it is, and just don't say that this doesn't even look like gravel. This looks totally like gravel, but these were also the times where they didn't decide on the gravel texture yet, so that's maybe why it looks like this, because yeah, gravel did not look like this yet. Or it actually kinda did, because both of the texture actually released in the same day, in the same snapshot, so yeah, that's a little crazy. But later on they changed it to what we have now, and I think that was 1 week later. Alright, now that we are talking about different types of stones, let's also talk about Cobblestone. And Cobblestone had 2 different texture types, or the ones that were there officially on the wiki, because there's also probably more in texture updates, which I'll cover later. Okay, the funny thing with these textures are that we actually received the first texture in 18W43A, and was this one. But Joppa has also posted a picture on X where we actually had the different texture. Okay, so this texture actually doesn't look, yeah, too different from the other one. The mouse is just placed a little differently, and the cobble is also placed a little differently, so there's not too much different to this, so it's not that bad. But there's also one more texture that I found, and I totally forgot what the source for this was, but it was in the scrap textures, so yeah, this is how it looks like. Source for this is probably the texture pack for the texture update, which I will cover in some later videos, but as you can see, there was a little less moss here, and the patches looked a little different, but yeah, still the colors and all that, it's the same. Alright, so this is my favorite development of any block in the game, and it's Obsidian, and it had 5 different versions before they landed on this. And also, I'm not counting the texture update versions, which I'll cover in the other videos, because I'm sorry, but I couldn't get my hands on them so easily. Alright, so on July 18, 2017, Jeb has actually posted this picture, which kinda looks like a mix between modern and the old Obsidian, and it didn't look too good. It looked a little too rough in my opinion. Alright, so the funny thing is that the day after that, Jeb has actually posted another texture, and was this one. And this one just looks a little more smoother than usual, and yeah, I don't know what to think about this. And the colors were also a little different. And in July 2018, which was 1 year after the last one, Job has actually posted this one. And this one looks a little more like mud. It doesn't look like a hard block. It doesn't look like something that would take like 16 seconds to destroy. So I guess I know why they didn't keep it. And at some point in the game we got this texture, and the wiki isn't able to tell us when this happened and when this was posted, or if this was even in the game, but I'll try to find it in the files of the textures later on and maybe remind you in my next video. But this is probably the best Obsidian texture that we ever got. I like the glowing effect, I like the cracks. This just looked much better than what we have now, but later on we actually got another texture. In snapshot 18W43A, which is kinda the texture update snapshot, we received this, which was a much more cracked version of the Obsidian, and a week later we got the one that we know now. So this development really seems funny to me and I absolutely enjoy this. So yeah, let's go to another block. And you probably know that cave vines looks like this and they were shown to look like this at Minecraft Live, but there was one texture found in the files which weren't addressed to be glow berries or glowing vines, but the people guessed that it was, and it's a pretty good theory, so I'm going to put it here. But yeah, as you know, it's still a deleted texture from the game. And as you can see, you probably see a resemblance that this is like the glowing vines, was never addressed that it is. Or if you can prove me wrong, you can say it in the comments, because sometimes I get these things wrong because I don't know everything about this. So yeah, this was kinda how it was supposed to look like. It's probably a prototype and it's also hard to find this texture anywhere. Alright, so before we go to my favorite deleted texture from the game, first of all, let's talk about rooted dirt, because it had a minor change and was added in February of 2021. But after that, Joppa has actually posted a picture, which was 2 days after the snapshot, where he posted an alternative version of the rooted dirt, which looked much worse. It had a lot less roots and was kinda connected in a weird way. It's hard to describe, but yeah, I didn't like it too much. Alright, so Brewing stands were announced by Jeb in September of 2012. And they actually looked really different. As you can see, the blaze rod just went through like this, and there was a low battle on the left. And of course, this was the version of the block. We didn't get the look of the item, only of the block, so this is kinda a wild guess of how the item would look like. So there's absolutely no confirmation that this is what the item would look like. Okay, so now I have the weirdest texture that got ever added. So you probably know snapshot 18W43A, which updated all the items, and somehow Joppa made this texture, and you probably know what it looks like. If you don't know, then thank God. But yeah, they absolutely changed it the week later. But this is probably the funniest mistake Mojang has ever made, because why did they even let something look like this? This is just weird. Alright, so in January of 2011, Mojang has actually made a film or a video which was Minecraft the story of Mojang, where they have actually shown a dispenser in their early model, which looked a little different. Alright, so its top was just a stone texture and its eyes were just kinda squinted, or they actually looked more angry, you couldn't just see any eyes. So this kinda looked like an angry dispenser. Alright, so 3 days after that, they actually added them officially to the game and they looked like this. Still the same eyes, but the top texture was actually changed. And also 1 year later, they actually deleted the squinted eyes and then they added the normal eyes. And yeah, that's what happened to dispensers. Okay, now let me show you how different the honeycomb texture looked like, and it's a little different, and the story behind this is also pretty fun. Because in August, Minecraft has added honeycombs to Java Edition, and they waited around 2 months until October, where they finally added it to Bedrock Edition. But the weird thing is, Bedrock Edition got different textures. This texture kinda looks like old Minecraft textures, the quality is a little worse, and it's much darker, and I don't know what to think about this, but I think I'm kinda liking this more. And the same thing happened with honey bottles, where they actually looked like this on Java and they look like this on Bedrock, and you can see the difference. The bottle is much darker and actually has the honey colors, and I gotta say that I like this texture more, even though that it's a honey bottle. Like, it doesn't get mixed up with the other bottles, so I guess that I like this texture a little more. And of course, both of these textures actually got changed on Bedrock 3 weeks after, so they didn't have them in the game for such a long time. Okay, so I ended my last video with Amethyst, so let's end this video with Amethyst too. So let's talk about budding Amethyst, which was announced on October 3rd, 2020. But on October 6th, we actually got the first screenshot with this unnamed block, which was, budding Amethyst. And this was of course the texture we got in the official snapshot for a while, and they actually changed it a while later. So a week later they actually changed it into this, and it's because they changed the amethyst to have more of these glowing crystals on it, which I also covered in my last video. And as you can see, the only thing that they changed after that was the middle. And as you can see, the middle kinda looked like a plus here, maybe like a star, but they actually made it into an X. And as you can see, it also had a much more visible texture at the very end. So after 2 weeks after that, it actually got changed into the budding amethyst that we actually know. And with this, I want to actually stop this video, so thanks so much for watching, and hopefully I will be here for another part, because this series is growing and growing, and I'm actually finding more and more textures, so we can actually go for even 10 or more parts. So, see you in my next video, and bye!